Okay, folks. So glad that everybody could make it tonight. Robin Schneider here I'm the Executive Director of Texas Campaign for the Environment. And so happy to have supporters here. You are the ones that make TCE able to function and do what it is we do. We also have TCE staff here that are working day after day to contact people around the state and involve them in our campaigns. TCE staffers, can you at least give a wave so people can see who you are, depending on what screen they're on? Thanks so much. So we wanted to start by giving you a chance to meet other folks who are on this call. Please do keep yourself muted until you go into your breakout room. We're going to do real quick 3 minutes where we want everybody to unmute themselves and go on camera to the extent that you can and are comfortable. And if you can just introduce yourself, say where you're from and how you connected to TCE and environmental issues that you care about. Make sure everybody has a chance to go. If there's room for a second round in your group, one extra question could be, what's the one thing that you could do or TCE could do to achieve our vision, which is a Texas free from pollution? So Mary is our person helping out with our breakout rooms. Mary, are you ready to go?
Ready when you are.
Okay, great. So 3 minutes, meet a person or two that you probably don't know already, and we'll see you right back here for the program. Hey, folks. Some of us didn't make it into the breakout room sessions. That's okay. Maybe we can just go around with those of us who are here in the room. I'm in Austin. Georgia, where are you?
I am in Central Austin, Brentwood.
Great, great. How about you, Bob? Bob Gonzalez, you want to unmute yourself?
Yeah, I'm from, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. In Corpus Christi, I'm
Great.
with the Coastal Bend Sierra Club.
Indeed, we've met before, if I'm not mistaken, Bob. How about you, Diana?
Hello, I'm also Central Austin, and I'm here with the Indigenous Cultures Institute.
Great, great. That's based in San Marcos, right?
Yes.
Wonderful. I've been hearing people on the radio recently from there. How about Erica? Do you want to introduce yourself? Tell us where you come from.
From Corpus Christi, Texas. I'm
Great.
just a listener here. Not
Wonderful. Thanks for coming. Corpus, as you know, is quite the hotbed. And how about you, Fernando?
Hi, my name's Fernando. I'm a reporter with the Texas Signal and was just hoping to cover y'all's annual meeting.
Oh, okay. Welcome, Fernando. And Paula? Paula, you want to unmute yourself and tell us where you're calling from?
Hi, I'm in Austin.
Great.
And I heard of the organization through Robin, and I'm a strong environmental activist.
Great. And Mark, you seem to be unmuted. Where are you from?
I'm in Dallas, and I'm with North Texas Renewable Energy Group.
Great. David?
Yes, I'm in Katy, Texas right now.
All right. So we got the Houston area, the Dallas area, Central Texas. Bob Hendricks. I know you, Bob. You want to show yourself? Another Austinite?
Yes, I'm Bob Hendricks. I'm chair of the Austin Sierra Club Executive Committee and a state coordinator for Citizens Climate Lobby.
Great. Welcome, everybody. So I think folks are coming back momentarily. Is that right, Mary?
Yep.
Here they come. Hi, Rita. Welcome. All right. Well, I hope that folks that made it into breakout rooms got to get to know somebody on the call that maybe you didn't know so well. I wanted to just give kind of an overall context of what TCE is focused on. There's, of course, lots of amazing environmental work on, and wanted to kind of give you a sense of the things that we are really focused on right now. As many of you know, our transportation sector is going electric. Our electric grids are going towards renewable and need to keep going towards renewable. But the oil and gas companies, to them, those two things are a big threat. And so they are trying to, lock in our dependence on fossil fuels in a number of ways, and especially by having more and more petrochemical plastics. Single use, of course, is a huge market, and then also fossil fuel export, whether that is liquefied natural gas, LNG, or crude oil. They want this as much as possible to be their profit centers of the future. And that's where we are really digging in right now. And when it comes to export, there are many export facilities concentrated in the Gulf Coast, in Louisiana, and in Texas. We're looking at crude and LNG export terminals. You can see there are actually more than the ones on this map, if you can believe that. Some of these are proposed, some of these are built or wanting to expand. And you can see some of these are offshore. So some of the crude terminals are onshore, some are offshore. These crude facilities are a very big concern, especially because of the oil spills that could occur. One of these projects called Spot off Brazoria County, the government estimated that over its 30-year life, if it's built, it would have approximately 568 spills, including 20 large oil spills. So imagine what that will do to the Gulf and to our wetlands, the crude facilities that are onshore, the impacts they can have on our bays. And that's when our Gulf has not even recovered from the big BP deepwater disaster. And this has implications for our economy, for commercial and recreational fishing, for ecotourism, and of course, for the endangered species and other species that call our Gulf Coast home. And keep in mind, of course, all these facilities are potentially vulnerable to the increasing hurricanes and flooding that we have in our region. So this is, obviously where a lot of pipelines end, but it's also where climate change impacts are very severe. So they have localized impacts, both the LNG and crude, on the communities where they are being planned or where they exist. And that includes, cancer-causing emissions and smog-forming emissions, visible and invisible. The one offshore terminal, if it's permitted the way the permit is currently drafted, would be the largest emitter of the volatile organic compounds. Those are both cancer-causing and smog-forming emissions in the country, the largest. And then one of these large terminals, for the terminals that could take up to 2 million barrels per day of crude, is equal to the emissions of 89 coal plants in terms of the climate. So you have your local impacts and then also major global impacts of these. And then you have the LNG, liquefied natural gas. Sounds nice. It's, natural, right? In fact, it's 90% methane. And in the short run, methane emissions are worse than carbon dioxide. And over the course of the 20 years, the impacts of methane are really almost as bad as coal. So contrary to popular belief, it's not clean and it's not a bridge fuel as it's been made out to be. You have emissions from the drilling to the pipelines to the exporting, and with LNG, you have the liquefying emissions, and then when they regasify it, there's more emissions there as well. So you don't have the oil slicks with LNG, but you have the danger of explosions. And people who live near these facilities that are already operating complain of large noise and their homes shaking as these huge tankers go by. And this fossil fuel export was kind of an obscure issue until the Russian invasion of Ukraine put a major focus on this issue because of the dependence of Europe on Russian gas, especially. And of course, the fossil fuel industry is making hay of this, just like they did during the winter storm, making extraordinary profits, jacking up prices. And luckily, there's new research out that really debunks the fact that we would need to build new terminals to meet the immediate need for Europe. That's not true. And in the long run, the EU and us need to boost our energy efficiency and renewables, not double down on fossil fuels. As the former Navy Secretary says, we need to shift away from the addiction to fossil fuels. That's our path that is safe for us and for the future generations. I wanted to now introduce to you John Beard, who is an amazing frontline leader, the founder of Port Arthur Community Action Network. He was in Glasgow for the COP treaty. He was last seen at the, or maybe not last seen, but seen at the Sarah Week, which is a big energy conference in Houston. He's been to Washington, D.C. He's an amazing advocate on our side. So John, I hear you might be on the phone instead of in visually, but are you there? John, we can't hear you. If you've muted yourself, please unmute yourself. Has anybody heard?
Oh, can you?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Absolutely. Go for it.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much, Robin. Thank you for that introduction. Good evening to all of you. It's afternoon here where I am in the great northwest rather. Excuse me. I'm getting my directions mixed up. Robin, some very good points you brought out. First of all, my thanks to TCE for allowing me to have these few minutes to speak to you. I'm going to try to condense down what could be a hours-long discussion and debate into just a few minutes. I was tickled, Robin, by what you said with regard to my being last seen. It sounds like there's an APB out for me, which, knowing the way I give problems to some of the local industry in Port Arthur and Southeast Texas, there probably is. They're probably looking for me with with a flashlight in the daytime because of the issues I bring up and the constant challenges. But I believe we live in a challenging time and era where we have to do that, because what we're faced with, ladies and gentlemen, is the future of humanity in this world as we know it. So first of all, good afternoon and good evening to my fellow comrades in arms in the environmental justice movement, to the officers and members and board of directors of TCE, to Robin in her chair and position, to my good friend, Jeffrey Jacoby, and others, say good evening to you. First of all, I'd like to start off with just talking about something Robin mentioned, and that was the Sarah Week conference. And I take some of what I'm going to say back to even the COP conference last year. And essentially, it was a lot of talk, but very little action. And now fast forwarding to the Sarah Week conference, the very first day, John Kerry, the UN envoy for climate change, was one of the first speakers. And what he said gave me chills, because it brought me to know in a totally different light and way the gravity and the severity and the nature of this fight we're in. So I want you to listen to me closely what he said. We always hear this discussion about not exceeding the 1.5 degrees Celsius. It's been said that by 2030, we would have to reduce our carbon output by 40% in order to not go past the 1.5 degrees C, which would be the tipping point to where there would be no return from the effects of global warming and the climate change it would induce. But Kerry went on to say that that was impractical and that it was not doable. Matter of fact, it would crash governments of not governments, but economies of the world, and it would also crash the industry. So what they're targeting, as you all are probably hearing just like me, is we're going to take this 40% and extrapolate it out to 2050. But Kerry goes on to say that the scientists have said that in that time frame, we will have exceeded the 1.5 degrees Celsius and will be as much of an increase in Earth's temperature as 2.7 to 2.8 degrees Celsius. That is catastrophic. That's more than twice what it would be at 1.5. So essentially what he's telling me is this, and what he's saying to all of us, is that our government and Big Oil has already accepted what they consider to be the inevitable. Why? Because they are bound and determined, as we learn from COP, and as we hear from the speeches and all of the talk that's going on, that they speak to us in the environmental movement out of one side of their mouth, but they whisper to their friends in government and in Big Oil in these industries with another. So we're being sold a bill of goods here. And those bill of goods happen to be the false promises and the false designs of using carbon sequestration and other false solutions, which are largely unproven and which will not work. Some of my brothers and sisters in the indigenous movement say the best way to do this is to keep it in the ground. But yet, as Robin said, we're leaking methane in the Permian Basin into the atmosphere. from thousands of abandoned oil or wells and wellheads and equipment. Sharon Wilson is a great person that goes around and uses a camera that can specifically see it. We even have satellites that can see this now from space to pinpoint these hotspots. But yet our government wants to go to what they call is cleaner, when in actuality it is worse. A little background on me: besides being the founder of Pecan, I spent 38 years in the petrochemical industry working for ExxonMobil Corporation as a maintenance person, also as a process operator, having to deal with the units that manufacture oil, gas, and other products, but also as an emergency responder, and also as an industrial firefighter. And one of the things you learn in this business is hydrocarbon, no matter what form it is, when you burn it, it releases carbon monoxide, other compounds, and some water. So anything you do burning these substances is going to add more carbon to the atmosphere. It may burn cleaner with less particulates, but it still has a component that is dangerous and toxic to the environment. So when Kerry said these things, it really unnerved me, because what it told me is that these guys already conceded this is going to happen. And for the desire to chase the almighty dollar, they're going headlong into this. And the government is supporting it. When I hear people like Richard Glick of FERC say that we've got to do more to help these companies so that when their permits go to court and are turned down, rather than taking years to go back over and do their permitting and do it the acceptable way with the proper EIS and the consideration of the environmental justice aspects and the local community impacts, that we've got to shorten that down to weeks, if not months, if not weeks. When I hear Jennifer Granholm, the Secretary of Energy, speak to the fact that we've got to get our hands around the permitting to make it easier and to get these projects online quicker. And then when I hear Joe Manchin, whom I met, and Joe Manchin tells industry, the captains of industry from all over the world, that you guys have the solution to this problem, and we're expecting you to do something about it, and that you have to set the narrative, because if you don't set the narrative and let the other side carry the narrative, then you're going to be playing from behind, and that's a loser's game. But we're here to help you. He basically pledged himself to that in what he said.
John,
So when we look at COP, go ahead.
thanks so much, John. Can you wrap up real quick?
Will do. So when you look at COP, when you look at all of these things that are going on, you have to come to realize that we're in an epic battle and a fight. And I'm glad in this work that I do in Texas and everywhere and trying to support others, that I have friends like TCE, like Robin, like Jeffrey, and all of you that I can work with and join hand and join arms with. It is going to be very important that we work together and cooperate, because they've got billions of dollars, but there's only billions of us. And we have to work together, because once again, the future of this country, the future of the Gulf Coast, the people that are affected by this, whether they be indigenous or people of color that live in the coastal areas like I do, that are prone to flooding, prone to the freezes and disasters that we've had, our future and our lives and those of our children and grandchildren are at stake. So once again, I thank you for this opportunity to speak to you. I want to thank TCE for the work that they're doing and continue to do in helping me and others. And once again, thank you and have a good evening.
Great. Thank you, John. You're a real hero in this battle, and it's really a pleasure and honor to work with you. Wanted to now turn it over to someone in the Coastal Bend. Chloe Torres is our TCE staffer working on the fossil fuel exports there. Chloe, please take it away.
Hi, everyone. Yes, my name is Chloe Torres, and I am proud to say that I was born and raised in the city of Corpus Christi, because we are abundant in natural beauty and rich cultural heritage. With that being said, we do have a serious problem here, and that is the fossil fuel buildout that disproportionately impacts communities of color. So it's about to get real dark, y'all, but I promise there is light at the end of the tunnel, so stay with me here, okay? So since 1935, Corpus Christi has constructed and operated oil and gas refineries. And due to racist urban planning, these refineries were built right next to the city's historic historically Black neighborhoods. This growth was so large that this area of the city is known to this day as Refinery Row, and it's infamous for high rates of pollution as well as elevated rates of asthma, cancer, and birth defects. This picture that you're seeing on the screen is a view from Refinery Row from a resident's backyard. And so more recently, residents around the coastal bend have been subjected to new oil, gas, and petrochemical build out. The Port of Corpus Christi is now the largest exporter of crude oil in the entire United States. Cheniere, the largest exporter of LNG or methane gas that Robin was mentioning earlier in the United States, is expanding their Corpus Christi site. And despite pushback from the community, Exxon and Saudi-owned SABIC built the world's largest ethane steam cracker, which will feed the production of nurdles, or tiny pellets that form the building blocks for plastic products. We are also waging legal and direct action struggles against what will be the largest oil export terminals in North America, headed by the infamous companies Enbridge, Phillips 66, and Trafigura. If all of this infrastructure wasn't bad enough, we are also having to convince the Corpus Christi City Council and mayor to stop giving away massive portions of our municipal water supply. The city and Port of Corpus Christi are trying to sell residents on the idea of desalination, which would extract water from our bay, remove the salt, then offer the potable water to new polluting facilities that they are greenlighting in our communities, and then dump the waste back into the bay. So for far too long, we have witnessed politicians on the local, state, and federal levels take oil and gas contributions for their campaigns, while working class people in the coastal bend are left to fend for ourselves when natural disasters made worse by climate change destroy our homes, when we're paying for expensive hospital visits due to our worsening respiratory health, and when we experience mass layoffs when these fossil fuel projects become too expensive to maintain, or these companies decide to hire out-of-towners instead. But that is precisely why we, Texas Campaign for the Environment, are coalition building with nonprofit organizations and grassroots ones, not only locally and across the nation, but throughout the world, to build the people power we need to fight and win against this fossil fuel apparatus. And so I believe that it's just as important to talk about our victories as much as our obstacles. So I'd like to share some examples of our victories. So through coalition building and digital organizing, we were able to turn out over 20,000 comments denouncing the permitting of that blue water oil terminal that I mentioned earlier. During the Corpus Christi 2021 budget vote, we generated 75 public comments and conducted a paid media campaign. And as a result, fiscal year budgeting for desalination in 2022 was cut by a third. And we forced this council to vote on record on desal for the first time. And furthermore, we don't just contest desal inside of City Hall. Citing the significant public comment we helped generate, the EPA decided to exercise oversight on the desal permits and already issued an initial objection on one of them. This kind of intervention is exceedingly rare in our line of work, and it would not have happened without widespread organizing efforts. And finally, we are working closely with frontline leaders to create unique opportunities that affirm our commitment to using every tool in the toolbox to take down these fossil fuel giants. So one example is our newly launched Artist Activist Grant, sponsored by our coalition ally, the Coastal Alliance to Protect Our Environment, or CAPE. And so the purpose of the grant is to support a member of the Coastal Bend community in the creation of an original public artwork that speaks to the pollution battles that we are facing, but also offers a vision of a healthy, thriving bay. So the link to the application is in the chat, and we have more information about the grant on our Facebook page. We'd really appreciate your help in spreading the word. And so I just want to close by expressing my immense gratitude to all of the organizers, activists, and supporters from my hometown. It is y'all's dedication, wisdom, and labor that made all of these victories possible. And to my TCE colleagues, thank you so much for your patience and your willingness to guide me. I can't wait to see what we accomplish together this year and many years to come. So with that, I will hand over the virtual mic to my amazing Deputy Director, Jeffrey Jacoby.
Thanks, Chloe. Sorry, I have to follow that. I'm Jeffrey Jacoby, Deputy Director with TCE, and I just want to reiterate the appreciation for my colleagues within the organization with whom we work in coalition, both in Texas, along the Gulf, in Louisiana, and across the nation and across the world. I also want to acknowledge that we have so many key activists here in the room tonight. Errol Summerlin, who is an inspiration, Alita Castillo, who has just pushed forward in the Coastal Bend, amazing work. Obviously, Bridget Shea, who you'll hear from in a few minutes, and Catherine Maston. I thought that I saw Chris Phelan, yes, Mark Nathan, our comms guru, and so many others that we work with on a day in, day out basis. Thank you so much for being here. I feel super lucky to work with all of you. In order to connect these efforts from Port Arthur to Corpus Christi, and even broader from Biloxi to Brownsville, and even broader to the financial institutions on Wall Street that are funding these dirty projects and climate chaos, and even broader to the international activists who are fighting on the other end of the LNG export issue in Germany and the Netherlands and Ireland and Spain and Poland. This is really the scope of the work that we're doing. It's not just about TCE, it's about how we show up with our friends, our allies who are all in this fight, this existential fight for the climate, for the planet, and I think most importantly for the people who are impacted day in, day out by these facilities. And so as our part, we are launching Save Texas, which is a media campaign that does its best on the Texas front to connect all of these dots together. Chloe mentioned a couple of these. This is really about naming names. You've all heard the quote that I'm going to butcher right now, which is, you know, the planet is dying and the people who are killing it have names and addresses. And they do. You have the Energy Transfer and Kelsey Warren, who profited the most during Winter Storm Uri, $2.4 billion. You have Cheniere that both Chloe and John are fighting in their communities. You have Enterprise Products, one of the other profiteers, et cetera, et cetera. It goes down the line. And so Save Texas is our effort to name those names, to connect these struggles. And tonight, we wanted to inform all of y'all that this is an effort that TCE and our allies are going to be really pushing over the course of the coming months. And you can help. So I'm going to ask everyone to grab their phones, go to Facebook, and search Save Texas. And I'm going to ask everyone to go to the Save Texas Facebook page and to like, follow, and share as far and wide as you can. This is not just about promoting a website. This is about standing with these communities who are facing destruction and who are at the bleeding edge of climate disaster. And what we're doing here with this effort, it's our sincere hope that we're going to get these companies who are perpetrating this assault against our Gulf Coast on notice that Texans won't stand for it, that it's high time that the fossil fuel industry understood that it is not the only gig in town. And in fact, we will resist, we will rise, and we will fight. And so I thank you so much for taking that action with us tonight. I'll turn it back over to my fearless leader, the illustrious Robin Schneider, And thank you all so much. Thank you again, Chloe. Thank you again, John. Thank you again, everyone, for being here tonight.
So when I moved to Texas 20 something years ago, a friend told me you have to look up a friend of mine, Bridget Shea. And so I did, and I am so glad to count Bridget Shea as a good friend and as a board member of TCE Fund, our 501c3 research and education arm. Bridget, please take it away.
Thank you so much, Robin. And I didn't think I could be prouder of being on the board of TCE, but I am thrilled with the incredible work that you all are doing and the really fabulous young new leadership that you have working around the state, and that you're literally training every day through the Canvas. It's a powerful tool to teach people how to speak in a way that moves people about what we can do to protect the environment. I'm going to talk a little bit about the fossil fuel pledge. I've taken it as a local elected official, and there's another campaign around fossil fuel non-proliferation treaty, which I think is brilliant. I am old enough to remember the nuclear weapons freeze campaign. I don't know if anybody else on the meeting does, but it was created when Ronald Reagan was president in the 80s, because Reagan was committed to engaging in what he called limited nuclear war and did not seem to understand that any nuclear war was, a planetary level extinction event. And so a number of people started an effort that was very grassroots oriented and that focused on local elected officials all across the country, and got cities, counties, villages, states all across the country to pass nuclear weapons free zone resolutions and laws. And that became known as the Nuclear Weapons Freeze campaign. And it swept across the country, and it had a huge impact on national legislation. And I think that's some of the really brilliant strategy behind the fossil fuel non-proliferation treaty campaign. At the grassroots level, you can have a powerful impact. That's actually why I came to Texas in 1988 and why I chose to run for office, is to fight climate change at the local level. A lot needs to be done at the federal level, but we can have an impact at the local level. And in fact, I'm going to do a quick screen share here. I just won re-election to my county commissioner's seat, and does that show up? There we go. Y'all able to see that? This is just one of the mail pieces that we sent out. And for a long time, Democrats, excuse me, have been wary to run on climate, but I've been working on this for 34 years, and I feel very strongly that we need to be talking about it. And my two major focuses are to fight climate change and to better prepare people for its impacts. So I ran on this. I won with 76% of the vote in the primary, which is huge. I had an opponent who was running a serious campaign. Thank you. And I do think that part of that percentage was a validation of the work that we're doing at the county on climate. So this is the fossil fuel pledge and the fossil fuel non-proliferation treaty are a great tool. And I know you got your hands full with the with the oil exporter campaign, but when you are victorious with that, or when you free up more bandwidth, I'm looking forward to TCE's work on this fossil fuel non-proliferation. I'm going to talk really briefly about, and how much time do I have left? I'm not watching the clock here. Anyway, we, with Robin's leadership and Dave Cortez from the Sierra Club, we put together an effort to target Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg, who was in town for South by Southwest, and who, as Secretary of Transportation, also oversees the little known department within that massive federal agency that permits maritime oil and gas terminals. I think I've got that right. Anyway, we put together a campaign, and we reached out to Mayor Adler. It was really TCE and allies that put it together, but we reached out to Austin Mayor Steve Adler, who's good friends with Pete Buttigieg, and appealed to his commitment on climate. I convinced him to go to Paris in 2015, and I think it was a huge education for him, and it really got him powerfully on board with other leaders around the country and the world who are fighting climate change. And so he gave us some guidance, and he also offered to help deliver to Pete Buttigieg a kind of either letter request, but it was an action request from TCE and others for him to really look closely at these maritime permits and not approve them. Anyway, Jeff and others did a great action. And is it time to tee that up? We have some video of what they did during South by Southwest when Buttigieg was on a panel.
This is South by Southwest in Austin. Pete Buttigieg is speaking here at 2:30, and we are encouraging people to send a message to Pete Buttigieg that we don't want deep water oil exporting terminals in the Gulf of Mexico that would wreck the climate, wreck the communities nearby, and wreck the Gulf, which is still not recovered from the Deepwater Horizon oil spill. So we're encouraging people to go to this talk, wear our t-shirts, and you go to pleasepete.com to send a message to Pete through our petitions.
As the secretary who oversees MARAD, which is the agency responsible for permitting these facilities, will you account for equity and environmental justice when it comes to overburdened communities who are dealing with these pollution issues and staring down the barrel of massive crude export facilities moving forward? Also, I brought you a t-shirt.
I can commit to you that that's a responsibility we take very seriously, and also commit to you that I'll learn more about this specific issue. And I'll take the t-shirt home with me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Love that action. And if all of you could now go to the take a minute and go to the pleasepete.com website and send him an invitation to tour the Gulf and ask him to deny the permits that will lock in new fossil fuel infrastructure for decades. Put that money instead into renewable investments. So the website is pleasepete.com if you take a minute to go there. And bravo again to all the great work that TCE does. I'm so proud to be on the board and proud to support these efforts. Thanks, Robin.
Thank you, Bridget. We are so happy to have you as one of our board members, and your willingness to talk to Austin Mayor Pete Adler and engage on that, and look forward to many years of cooperation. So we are having you take some action. We hope you'll do it now, or if you can, or later if that suits your schedule better. As Bridget mentioned, we are actually starting to canvass and direct people to write letters to Pete Buttigieg. We also want people to tweet at him as well. And so this is part of a whole campaign around fossil fuel exports. And we're very excited to be going door to door again. We've been suspended that during the pandemic, and we're happy to re-embark in our core outreach method. So Bridget also mentioned the No Fossil Fuel Money Pledge, and this is something that some of you might have heard about and helped with. Before the primary, we had our supporters send emails to the candidates in their races and urge them to break up with fossil fuels and to sign the No Fossil Fuel Money Pledge, that they wouldn't take money from fossil fuel PACs or lobbyists or key executives. And we had nearly 50 new pledge signers in 2022 primary races, and many of those signers are moving on to runoffs or the local level. So thanks if you helped out on that campaign, and we're continuing that with some key primary runoffs. We've done some research, and we have some key races to watch. 2 congressional races where one candidate has taken the No Fossil Fuel Money Pledge and their opponent has taken fossil fuel money. One of those is Congressional District 28, which goes from San Antonio to Laredo, where Jessica Cisneros is the pledge signer, and incumbent Congress member Henry Cuellar has taken the money. And Congressional District 30 in South Dallas, where State Rep Jasmine Crockett has taken our pledge. Another race we are also concerned about is State Senate District 27 that stretches from Brownsville and now goes to parts of the Coastal Bend, parts of Nueces County where Corpus is, and also San Patricio County. Pledge signer Sarah Stapleton Barrera has taken the pledge, and her opponent has taken money from Energy Transfer, the company that's come up a few times as one of the terrible 12 that's headed by Kelsey Warren. We are, so the runoffs are May 24th. There are statewide runoffs on both the Democratic and Republican sides. So definitely encourage you to go to Vote 411 and vote around those. Before that, May 7th, there's actually municipal elections and 2 statewide constitutional amendments dealing with property taxes. Many local governments have their elections May 7th, including some key cities like Denton, Arlington, which have been big battles over fracking in the urban areas in North Texas, and then Coastal Bend cities and cities in Brazoria County, where we have a lot of battles over fossil fuel export campaigns and other issues. So we're definitely looking at those races, seeing how we can educate and mobilize voters in those communities as well. And of course, looking towards November, and where there are some local elections, including Corpus Christi, which is a critical city. You heard Chloe talk about how important that is on export and on desalination and petrochemical plants. So definitely we'll be investing a lot of time and effort in the Coastal Bend in the coming year, as well as these other communities. So there's, I want to take a moment and just let you know we are hiring. If you know anyone who wants to work for TCE and get experience doing organizing door to door, we are definitely looking for folks. And I think we have a quick little video that has some kind of a highlight reel on that.
Texas, all the way from Brownsville to Port Arthur, there are crude export and liquefied natural gas facilities planned, some operating. We need to stop any expansion and stop any new facilities. We need to do this together.
Can you imagine a Texas free from pollution? If we can imagine that, we can make it happen together.
Once again, thanks, Trevor, Carol, for helping out with video, and want to open up for questions and let you know that we're going to wrap up at 8 o'clock. But if there are folks who want to engage in dialogue, I'm willing to stick around until 8:30. So we'll take a little 3-minute bio break and come back. But we have from now until 8 for questions from the floor, ideas. If you want to put something in the chat or speak up, I can't see everybody to call on you, but if anybody has their hand up and can see that, please speak up. Any feedback for us?
Robin?
Yes.
Y'all rock.
Kathy,
Hi, how are you doing?
Great, Kathy, great activist in Port Aransas. Thanks for being here.
Hey, I just wanted to say real quick that for those that don't know, the second DSAL hearing just with the State Office of Administrative Hearings wrapped up on March 25th. I've been very much involved with that, as has Port Aransas Conservancy, and I was spokesperson for some of the pro se people, the people not represented by attorneys. I don't want to jump the gun, don't want to give any too much optimism here, but I don't think that the judges were swayed by any of the new experts that the port hired from all around the world to try to back their story. But everybody needs to be aware that there's 3 other plants being proposed, not just the one from Port Aransas. And of course, our deal that we've been adhering to has been take the discharge offshore, take the intake and discharge offshore. Harbor Island is just not the right place because it's not close to any infrastructure that makes sense, but it would be the largest plant being proposed. But we still have a big problem there, and Errol knows this. There at La Quinta, where 2 are proposed, and then another one at Inner Harbor in Corpus Christi. The EPA, and I'm sorry, there's so many people and I forget names really quick, but the EPA did send several letters, and I'll put this nicely, but TCEQ basically essentially responded to several of their letters in what I would say was an FU letter, and said they're not changing anything about the applications, and they're not going to consider these major instead of minor facilities. So the EPA sent another letter that said, well, if y'all want to go that route, that's fine, but in the end, we're the final say on this permit, and you can, even if you approve, even if they were given the permit by TCEQ, that the EPA can just override them completely. The EPA is, you know, in the end, they are the final say. And what their problem is that they do believe that water quality issues have not been addressed properly. And they made several points in previous letters as questions they want answered that TCEQ is refusing to answer. And they are still standing by their deal that they've done it by the book. But I just wanted to point out to everybody, and this, I'm writing the closing argument for our pro se group right now. And what Port Aransas Conservancy, what TCEQ and the Port of Corpus Christi, what all of them really haven't factored in is the issue. And this is, I know that this is all, there's so much more involved here, but this is a big deal to me and to us because it's about red tides. And there is a recent studies that just came out, in fact, this year, that shows there's been an increasing salinity issue in all our Corpus Christi Bay systems, and it's affected the oyster populations and everything to where we don't even have a commercial oyster fishery anymore. At one time, just so everybody knows, Corpus Christi was the largest oyster fishery in the state, in Texas at one time, and now we're nil, absolute nil on that. And so our increasing salinities, which is, you know, there's a lot of different reasons, but here we are proposing to dump what would be the equivalent of 2 1/3 BLCC loads a day into the ship channel right there at Redfish Bay, which is the primary fishery. And so we need to be aware that these red tide balloons, and red tide is directly linked to higher salinity. And so if we can't ignore that. And this is a point I want to drive home with everybody. It's an argument that anybody else that's dealing with desal needs to start making and get these red tide studies out there so that people understand there's a direct correlation. And for those of you that don't live on the coast and don't know what red tide is like, it's a joy to go through a red tide experience. And I'm obviously being very sarcastic. We're talking thousands of fish, thousands of marine life get killed. You can't work outside, you can't function.
It's very important. And this is just a small piece of the puzzle, but all we know this, that it's strictly to attract more industry. It is not about supplying a potable drinking water
Kathy,
for.
we are
Yes.
winding up here. It's
Okay, well, that's all I want to say. That's all I want to say.
Kathy's doing something extraordinarily important and difficult, representing herself without an attorney in these fights in the Coastal Bend area. Thank you so much for all you've been doing. And want to thank everybody for coming out. And as I said, I'll be sticking around. If people want to take a little break, I'll be here until 8:30. If folks have things they want to, ideas to share or questions that you have come up, I'm happy to stick around and be with our supporters and friends. So thank you again for being here, and I don't want to keep you later than you planned.